Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another.
What's up?
That's right, by popular demand, my friend Anthony is back. He does that so good, better than anybody on the face of the planet. Anthony is he's a Linux beginner, a Linux newbie, as it were. It's been less than a year. I installed Linux Mint on an old machine that he's currently still using. So you guys had fun listening to the first Wazzzup TosCast. I thought I would bring him on again based on your request, and I did share with Anthony some of your positive, kind comments. So Anthony does know. So Anthony, welcome back. How are things going?
Well, Toss, I've got three computers. Two of them have Windows on them, and one of them, this desktop, has Linux. And guess which one works, and guess which two don't.
You tell me.
Well,
You tell me. You tell all of us. Yeah.
well, right now I'm using my trusty Linux Mint 16, and
Okay.
unfortunately I've been unable to get my Windows computers online, so that's where I
Okay.
am.
All right. So far, Linux Mint is working for you.
Yes, Linux Mint is working for me. I'm getting a little better at listening to my the games, the audio broadcast of the games that I like to listen to. Okay,
Uh,
I'm still having an issue with the, sometimes it goes into stutter and I have to pause and unpause to get it
okay.
to stop.
Okay.
But I am getting better at opening it up with the videos mode so that I
Okay.
can pause it when I want to, and I know that if I put it on pause too long, I'm going to have to go back and set it. So I'm learning to work with it.
Okay. Well, hopefully, when the LTS, the long-term support of Linux Mint is released, that may solve some of the issues. That should be coming out at the end of May. So probably sometime this summer we'll replace the previous version of Mint with the new one. Now that being said, you mentioned Mint and you use, of course, Windows almost forever, kind of like me. You touched on some of it. We touched on some of it, excuse me, on the previous Was Up podcast. So basically, maybe share with us some 3 or 4 points what you really like about Linux Mint first, and then after that we'll go into the bad stuff. So share with us all the positives that you have experienced so far.
You want to do like CNET does, the good, bad, and the ugly?
Well, maybe no ugly, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the good, bad, and the beautiful. How's that?
Okay, okay.
Well, I mean, what I do like about it is that it is pretty intuitive. Okay, I was overthinking it. I realize that now, and you kind of helped me to just step back and, try not to come in with preconceptions about, what Windows would do because it's like learning a language. If you're constantly thinking about, well, how do you say that in English? You're not really learning the language to be fluent in it. So to be fluent in Linux, I have to kind of stop asking myself, okay, how would I do this in Windows?
Okay. Mm,
So that has helped quite a bit.
okay. So basically it's basically starting with the fresh perspective and then kind of picking up things as you go along, more or less.
Right. Well, just tonight, of course, I was, trying to find something,
Hmm.
and I wasn't able to find it the way I tried. So what I should have done was to try it another way, because like with any operating system, there's more than one way to do something. But I got frustrated, and that's why I called you.
Okay, well that's fair. I mean, it's still a learning process. You are still somewhat new to this. Um, Let me ask you this: in terms of not so much the internet speed and listening to stuff on the web, but in terms of operating speed, turning it on, off, going straight to your application, straight to your program, shutting it down. How does that compare to Windows?
Well, I haven't really timed it, but it does seem to be at least as fast opening up and closing down as I remember Windows.
Okay. Would you say it would be fair assessment to say, if anything, it might be slightly faster in terms of the overall performance of the OS?
Well, it might, but I haven't really been paying
Okay.
attention to that because, right now speed is not a big issue to me.
Okay. You're interested more in it being stable, like, and everything works, right?
That's right. Stable, easy to find, to navigate. Okay,
Okay.
and like you said, functionality,
Okay.
simplicity.
So it sounds like, okay, some simplicity. So it
Yeah.
sounds like little by little it is getting easier for you versus
Yes.
say 6 months ago, right?
Yes, I would definitely say so. I mean, and I'll probably have to go through some separation anxiety when we put the new Linux system in.
Well, we'll go with the same. I think we installed the Linux Mint. I forget if it's XFCE or the Mate edition. You probably don't have a clue, but we'll stick with the same interface, as it were. So you really, I mean, it won't be that much of a shock. How does that sound? It'll look the same. It'll just be an updated system. So we'll just probably do that probably sometime in June. So would you say, give it another, well, would you say by this time next year you would feel a lot more comfortable using Linux Mint?
Oh, certainly.
Okay. All right. Now you said that this one is working, Linux Mint, but the other two machines are not working. Tell us briefly what operating systems you have and why they are not working.
Well, one has the Windows XP on it. The other has Windows 7, which I just had the one computer with the XP, cleaned by someone who knows what they're
Okay.
doing.
Okay.
Okay. The other laptop, I had it, a new hard drive put in, Windows 7 put on for me. I was all excited about using it. I
Okay.
cannot connect either one to my Wi-Fi, despite
Okay.
multiple efforts.
Okay. So with the Windows 7 one, everything works except the Wi-Fi. Is that true?
Yes, it seems to be operating, you know, uh, other than being able to connect to the internet. Right.
Okay, well, to be fair with Windows 7, since the machine was cleaned out and reinstalled, your issue is probably not a virus because it is clean. So it's either maybe a bad Wi-Fi adapter, or maybe it's missing some drivers. I don't know. I would kind of have to take a look at it. As far as the other one with Windows XP, I'm glad you brought that up because that expires here pretty soon. So it's probably just as well that we just let that expire and just install another Linux on that, laptop. But as far as the Windows 7 goes, I would probably say there's either something wrong with the Wi-Fi card or adapter, or it could be the simple thing as installing an updated driver. Now, we've talked about a little bit about Linux and various versions of Windows. As far as Linux Mint goes, we've talked about the plus and some things in the past, such as not having to worry about viruses. Usually, not 100%. Excuse me, nothing is 100%, but malware in general, it's not an issue. With Linux, usually Linux will run a little bit faster than Windows. In some cases, much faster. That of course will depend on the hardware and what version of Linux. Now, we've talked about the good, that it's little by little it's getting easier to navigate to and through. We've talked about the good, so let's be hyper honest here, as it were. What, in your opinion, what does, or if anything, what does suck using Linux?
Well, one disappointment that I've had with it is that I haven't been able to get Pandora on my Linux Mint,
Okay.
which is one of my favorite stations and something that I am used to listening to on my Android phone.
Okay. So it sounds like Flash support can sometimes be an issue with various versions of Linux. What else have you had any issues with?
Well, like I mentioned before, um, that the audio, it's not really audio streaming, but they are like,
Yeah.
archived sporting events
Okay.
that I listen to,
Okay.
and it tends to
Sputter.
uh, sputter. Right, exactly. Okay, pretty regularly. So, I
Okay.
mean, I suppose, I mean, I'm glad that at least I get it. All right, so that's, I can put up with that. All right,
Okay.
at least I can get it. Uh,
Okay. Um, Now last night we spoke on the phone, and I have to give Anthony credit. He was able to almost figure out on his own how to set up his printer. But and then you had asked, well, to install the CD. Well, the drivers that come with most printers, if not all of them, are usually for Windows, maybe Mac. There really aren't, Linux drivers, at least none that I have seen. So normally, as far as printers go, you would, plug in your printer via the USB cable, turn on the your computer, and whatever you're running, assuming that you have all the updates, Linux Mint or something else. Normally, sometimes a pop-up dialog, will come up on the screen searching for drivers. It didn't pop up on this version of Linux Mint, but we were able to install a comparable driver. And then last night, with a little bit of help of me, I'm really proud of my friend. He was able to figure out how to set the default, how to set his default printer. I think it's. Do you have an HP?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So for me in the past, even now, printer driver setup or printer setup can sometimes be, pain in the and I had a feeling, well, I know that you experienced that also. Hopefully, as Linux becomes more and more mainstream, that may be less and less of an issue. I haven't done a topic on this yet, but I'm beginning to feel really since the first of the year that as far as a Linux operating system or a Linux desktop becoming mainstream, like to the mom and pop, I think there is one company that can pull it off, and to me that's Google. They've got the resources. They already have a Linux type of operating system or a system based off of Linux, which is Android, and most of us or a lot of us use Android, and maybe with a big name behind a Linux desktop, Google desktop, as it were, maybe there would be more support, for printers and stuff like that. Again, I'm just speculating here, but I have a feeling that could probably work if there was a need or a demand for somewhat of an official Linux-based desktop. All right, so we've talked about Linux Mint, we've talked about Windows. In terms of either or both, if you could, what would you change, if change anything?
You mean what would I change with either operating system or?
Yeah, what would you like to see, or can anything be done to make it simpler? Or is it fine the way it is? Like, maybe it's simple enough. It's just a matter of perspective.
Well, I mean, I would say I'm really probably too new to Linux and too basic a user to, come up with,
Okay,
any suggestions or,
okay,
uh, even constructive criticism. I'm still learning, so I'll just
fair enough.
continue to be the Linux student at this point.
Okay, well, let's end it with this. What advice would you give to any Linux newbie?
Well, remember, one of the most valuable aspects of Linux is something that you're most of the time not even going to be thinking about. And that's because you don't have to worry about it. And that is the fear of viruses.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because that's really my number one reason why I use various versions of Linux, and that's security. Not that, I mean, I dual boot between Windows 7 and Linux. Not that my Windows 7 is not secure. It is, but there's a little bit more work and more maintenance involved with Windows, and it works fine, but there's a little bit less, at least on the security part, the less maintenance in Linux in terms of malware. Not that it's indestructible, or not that it cannot be infected with malware. It's certainly possible, but the percentages are generally in your favor in terms of a cleaner system in terms of malware when it comes to a Linux-based operating system. So it sounds like the advice you were given is, for anybody who has a Windows XP and want to keep your older machine and not pitch it or throw it away, why not try Linux? It might be easier, if not in the beginning. Maybe in your case, about 7 months later or so, you found it to be easier and not that difficult, and maybe not as scary or not as difficult as it was in the beginning. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay, so you would be happy continuing with Linux Mint and getting better and getting more comfortable, and if we can maybe solve some of those issues that you were talking about in terms of listening to online streaming stuff, you would be even more happier with Linux Mint. Is that true?
That's true. And in Linux's defense, I actually recall now that program is playing through a Windows Media Player because you're first asked to load. I think it's called Starlight or something, which is certainly Windows based. Then if you can't do that, you're supposed to try the Windows Media Player. So I'm assuming that's also Windows based, but maybe I should be impressed with the fact that it's even able to play through it in some fashion.
All right, so it sounds like part of this may be just some part of compatibility issues within the various types of software. Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, I think for now we can probably conclude this Wazzzup TosCasts podcast number 2 as far as the Wazzzup series go. And I'm calling it Wazzzup because we're doing this for fun. Sometimes when we call each other, we'll say, what's up, and go from there. But we wanted to do this because Anthony is a beginner, a newbie, as it were, and he has taken the time to learn something new with my help, and just to show all you people out there that Linux does not have to be difficult or impossible, that there are at least some versions of Linux, such as Linux Mint, and there are others such as Ubuntu and Zorin and some others that, in the thousands of different kinds of variables that you can find with Linux desktop, there are some out there like the ones we use, and I also use Linux Mint. In fact, I'm using Linux Mint now. I'm using the Cinnamon version of Linux Mint just as a personal choice to record this. So just to let newbies out there that Linux is not just for geeks. Some is, but like the distributions that we use, it's not necessarily for geeks. You can certainly download it, try it out, and as time goes on, you can certainly learn from it. And you know what? And the worst that can happen is, you tried it, didn't like it, and move on to Windows, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, Anthony, at this time, if you have any final thoughts, let us know. If not, we can conclude this.
Just one last thought.
Sure.
What's up?
Of course. What else? Well, okay. Thank you. Thanks to everybody out there who enjoyed the first one. Thank you for this one. And March 29th marked 4 years of the Total OS Today channel, by the way. Thank you. Hope to do this as long as I can. Support the channel when you can. It'll be greatly appreciated so I can expand maybe into doing requested Apple product reviews. Okay, for myself, Toss Today, and for Anthony, we are signing off. Ciao.